I'm sure all of you have had a long day. I'm Michelle Stork, and this is the Continuous Systemic Improvement Advisory Committee meeting for Wednesday, February 12th. Welcome. Could I please entertain a motion for approval of the meeting agenda?
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second? Thank you. All in favor of tonight's agenda? Raise your hand just so we can. Perfect. Anybody opposed or abstaining? Excellent. So now I would like to entertain a motion for approval of the meeting minutes from our previous meeting, which was January 8th.
So moved.
Thank you, Jason. Do I have a second? Thank you. All in favor, just raise your hand.
I'll abstain from voting.
Okay, thanks, Rachel. So Rachel's abstained, Julie. Okay, so now I would like to welcome Mrs. Morgan, and we are looking forward to hearing her board report.
There's not a lot to report, but first of all, my apologies for sending the documents out late. You all should have received this. Okay. Actually, at the board meeting yesterday, we had an update from our level executive directors. That is the two people overseeing the elementary schools, one overseeing the middle and one overseeing the high. They presented some preliminary numbers, which we discussed, but they weren't complete. And I would like to suggest that the committee, that we invite them to come present to the committee, because essentially what they were doing was showing us first quarter reports out of the elementary school, middle and high school, and second quarter reports. And then what we did not have when they presented yesterday, what we saw in the numbers was sort of a plateau for 1920. But according to them, there is improvement from 1819 to 1920, and those numbers weren't available. So I think it would be interesting for the group to have them come present to us. So that's one thing I want to mention. The other thing you will read about in the paper, and I wanted to talk about it just briefly, and that is the discussion about millage. Most of you are aware that sales tax was put on the ballot 2 years ago and passed. The sales tax is only for capital improvements. It cannot be used for anything other than building, renovation, technology, that kind of thing. And as you're probably aware, that there's been a lot of conversation in the country and in the state and locally about what we pay teachers, they're underpaid, whatever. I shouldn't say whatever, because it is a fact. They are grossly underpaid for their education and for the work that they do. The situation we're faced with in Lee County is that our neighbors to the north and south have passed increases in millage, which is different than a sales tax increase. So the increase in millage is permitted for operating purposes, and it's out of the operating budget that we get money to pay salaries. I simply want you to be aware that the board has agreed to open the conversation with staff to have staff start doing research on the numbers, and the board has not moved beyond that. Staff has not given us hard numbers. Essentially what they laid out was, from an academic point of view, if we had additional dollars, what were the three priorities in academic services? How would we use that money? They haven't priced out what the individual options were. And then the second piece, and it has totally slipped my mind, well, there was a second piece from, not academic services, from HR, compensation, compensation. What would the goals be? What would the priorities be in compensation? Would it be extending the day? No, that was academic services. Academic services was extending the day, extending the school year for certain groups. Compensation was, do we pay more for turnaround schools? Do we pay more for travel? Do we pay, those are the kinds of things that were being thrown out as potential options. They have not been priced out, and the board hasn't responded in any direct way. But I am assuming that people will hear in the community the board's talking about more taxes. Well, the board is talking about our compensation situation, our operating fund situation, but we're also doing it in the context of the governor having said He's looking to put 600 million into salaries. He is, of course, getting that from other places in the education budget. It's not new money, it's coming from other areas of the budget, from 5 areas of the budget, 4 of which will have no impact on us. So the fact that they're taking money out of it statewide will actually benefit us because we'll be picking up money that has been taken out of other districts, not that that's what we want to do, but, so there's just a lot of conversation that will be taking place. So I just wanted to let you know, and I'm open to questions about anything you'd like to ask me about.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
So I know the governor was talking about,
Oh, yeah.
the salary starting at 47,000. So does that mean that if new teachers are starting at 47, are they going to adjust the salaries for the old
Others.
teachers?
So that, there has been huge pushback, and I don't think there's anybody who believes that this governor's plan will go through as is. The governor's plan says 47.5 for starting teachers. Everybody recognizes that there are 5-year teachers who are not making 47.5. Right now, the Senate is talking about 500 million, the House is talking about 600 million. They're not talking about how that money would be allocated, so, but honestly, I can't believe that they don't understand that we would have a huge problem if they just use starting teacher salaries. And it's not just starting teachers, I mean, I think the governor's talked about just teachers, not about support staff and special services and that kind of thing. So that remains to be seen, and we probably won't learn how it's gonna work out until the last day of session. We'll know what it is, so.
And my other question is, for example, so this is my 10th year of teaching and also have a master's. And we have a bunch of new teachers at our school who literally started teaching in August for the very first time. So when we got that best and brightest, so me who's been there for 10 gets $500, and this new teacher who started has never been in the classroom, got $4,500.
Yeah, I know.
That's a problem.
And the best and brightest is the money that's going away.
Yeah,
So, you're taking money away from teachers from experienced, high-performing teachers, and you're giving it to the new teachers. And all I can say to you is, there isn't anything you can say to me that the legislators haven't heard out loud from school boards, from superintendents, and from teachers.
yeah, because we know it's not the school district, it's not
No,
your fault.
No.
But it's so frustrating because there's honestly like 3 teachers right now that will probably not be back next year who have taught for 15 to 20 years because they literally cannot survive on this as, for retirement. And it's sad because they're really good teachers.
Yeah.
So, well, let's hope that they do something.
Yes, well, I think obviously the fact that the governor has come out with his proposal and the House and the Senate have both talked seriously about more money. They recognize that we are at a tipping point in this state. We are so far behind with respect to salary. And something has to happen, and it is an election year, and that is one way to get people's attention. So, I think we all are optimistic.
I think of her, like redistricting and transportation changes. Did the district hire a consultant to look at
Yeah,
transportation?
thank you.
Move people around?
Yes, thank you. So, the district has been talking about moving from our choice to something we call proximity. The reason being that, as you know, transportation is very expensive. And for example, on the Cape, there are kids who could choose up to 12 schools within a 2-mile distance. And so we need to shrink the options so that we're not transporting kids all around the place. And so what we have done, we've brought in a consultant to work with us for 18 months and to train our staff in the use of their software. We're working with the county GES system, but basically they're going to map every student, and we're going to try to figure out how we can shrink the number of options for children and families to, let's say, 3 to 5. Because we also want to create a sense of neighborhood. And if the choices are fewer, and populations are more not commingled, I can't think of it, anyway, the populations are more
Diverse.
thank you. So the dilemma we have, and one of the reasons we had to hire an outside consultant is that we need to be economically diverse, we need to be ethnically diverse, culturally diverse, and because otherwise we're gonna have a problem. Because somebody will be able to say, we're not being fair and equitable in terms of opportunities for kids. So it is going to be a very comprehensive project. And out of this, we hope there will be what we are calling a proximity plan, which will provide every child and every family the opportunity to have choice, but the choices will be limited, not necessarily by distance, but by other factors.
So will they keep, like our South Fort Myers and Dunbar are international schools? So will they still continue to keep that kind of, or is that gonna change?
No. The first step is elementary.
Okay.
Because elementary is really consistent across the board. The differences in elementary, there are some in terms of reading programs, there are some in terms of before and after school care programs for parents, that kind of thing. But essentially the belief is that we can make the elementary schools look enough alike that they are equitable and fair alternatives for parents. We recognize that the choice options for middle school and high school present a totally different challenge. That's not going to be addressed in the first 18 months.
Okay.
Mrs. Morgan, I do have one question. You mentioned inviting the committee that presented yesterday, I believe it was, to present at this committee. What department is that or committee is that?
Okay, so there are 4 executive directors who report to the superintendent. Effectively, they supervise the principals at different levels. So Clayton Simmons supervises the high school principals, Linda Mayer supervises the middle school, Denise Carlin and Shanna Fletcher are elementary. And so they basically looked at the data at their levels for the first and second quarter to see how students were doing in terms of performance, proficiency, that kind of thing. And they reported to the board. So that's, and I guess what I should do is talk to you, or maybe Cindy, assuming they give us the additional data we asked for and are ready to present. I think that would be something that would be worthwhile, because it would bring this, which was last year, and bring it forward and see sort of where we are. And that way you can ask some really, I would think, more impactful questions.
Right, so Julie, I know that you're taking the minutes, so we'll have that in the record for Cindy, so she can get that scheduled when it's an appropriate time for us. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
as someone who bargained contracts, albeit in another state, for the better part of 25 years and lobbied to get the money to make the increases, it was suggested we don't know why they don't understand. They understand. They fully understand what they're doing. And of course, what they're doing is hoping to attract young teachers. This is just a perspective on the whole thing. It was also said this is an election year. I never like to charge people who are doing things only for politics, but maybe their desire really looks at that and says, this is the way to go. Some 40 years ago, I made a plane ride from the president of the teachers union to Waterloo, Iowa, to a conference. And we had about 2 hours to talk. We sat right next to each other in the plane. It was right after the somewhat failed statewide strike here in Florida. And she told me of the things that were never happening in Indiana. Light bulbs hanging from the ceiling, bare light bulbs, textbooks, no textbooks, many, many classrooms, particularly in the interior areas. And so I think I have a feel for what has been happening here in Florida, even though I wasn't here. So they know. They just aren't willing to bite the bullet and make the big enough commitment to do the right thing, and that is to bring all steps of that salary schedule up at the same time, and not cheat the veteran teachers who've been here and serving for a long, long period of time, some of them at least. Okay, I'm off my soapbox.
All right, thank you. Does anybody else have anything for Mrs. Morgan?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment to what this gentleman had said. I just came back from Tallahassee, as Warren knows, I just made it here like 5 minutes, what a drive that was, but I just spent 2 days lobbying for different issues up there, and I gotta tell you, there's a few of our folks, I'm not gonna name them, Kathleen, you know who they are, that are out of coupons, so they're coming to the end of their reign, and going in to talk to those people, like, I was wasting my time. So there's a lot of people that just aren't getting it. Now, the good news is it's gonna take some time because those folks are rotating out and there'll be people that are coming in that are gonna be campaigning. But you know, we took this water issue on big time and we're doing a great job as municipalities getting the state and federal government to respond to water. And I think some way, somehow, we gotta make this teacher salary thing in Florida the next big initiative. We got the water thing moving now. It's gonna take us 10 years to flush out and clean it away with all the projects we have going. It's not gonna happen overnight, but we gotta raise the legislator in Tallahassee to really step up to the plate. And you folks have to ask, as citizens, you have to ask your municipalities to help us do that like we did with the water. So if we get every mayor and everyone out there to talk about this thing and go up to Tallahassee and raise hell about it, then we'll start getting some attention.
Elections have consequences.
Leadership understands.
Thank
Current
you.
leadership understands.
Just on I just want to add to that conversation, just on a separate note, I think some of you know that most of my students are K-12 teachers. I teach in a graduate program in the College of Education. And one of the things we have discussions about is ways for them to advocate for their profession. And a lot of times, teachers don't understand that that means going to their legislators and going to Tallahassee to advocate for some of these issues. Because it's not necessarily at the district level. So that's a good point, thank you. Anything else for Mrs. Morgan or? Okay, so we do have public comment, but I don't believe we have any members of the public here to speak. So we are early, but we'd like to welcome Jane LaFontaine here to talk about the pre-K initiative in the district. We know that that is part of the Vision 2030, and we've heard wonderful things about you and what you're doing in pre-K and what you've done in your career with pre-K, so we're excited to hear from you today.
Maybe I should just use that. All right, so I'm Jeannie LaFontaine. I have been here a long time, and I currently oversee Title I, Migrant, the Teen Parent Program, and Early Childhood. The biggest part of my career has been spent in our early childhood programs here in the district. I have a real passion for early childhood. I drank the Kool-Aid when it came to Head Start, so if anybody's familiar with Head Start, I took a big drink of that and have really always believed in Head Start and it as the model for early childhood programs. So I was asked just to share some information with you tonight about early childhood. And so, I'm happy to talk to you about anything you want to talk about. So this is just kind of, the things that I thought you might be interested in. But this one is the first one is Early Education Matters. And there's lots of research out there. And, the numbers may be a little different here and there about how much money you save and so on and so forth. But there's a lot of information out there that really says that the key is high quality early childhood programs. It's not always just early childhood programs, but it's high quality early childhood programs really make a difference. And there's a very significant correlation between children who attend high quality programs and those who graduate from high school. So there's lots of research out there that says, that supports that. So we know that it matters. Wanted to just share with you, this is early childhood in Lee County. The only thing this does not include is young children who are served in self-contained ESC classrooms. Now, all of these, you can see the East, South, and West zone. We serve approximately 1,168 kids in our Head Start, VPK, Title I, Migrant. We have a SIG-4 grant. And so in those programs and Early Head Start, which is birth to 3, we serve approximately 1,168 kids across the district. We serve approximately 1,700, I think, give or take, including our pre-K ESE population. So, but you can see this is where our programs are. This is the number of kids that we have in those programs, and there's the funding sources. We have lots of funding sources that come in to the district. So, that's where we are here in Lee County right now. I believe that you were interested in some school readiness goals. What I tell people that they're often surprised about is there are birth to kindergarten standards. So if you are familiar with the K-12 population, every grade level has standards, and those standards are, this is kind of what kids are expected to do by the end of the first quarter, second quarter, and all the way, and by the end of kindergarten or 5th grade, we know these are the milestones that those students should have reached. Pre-K has the same thing, birth to 5. And so we have a relatively small, about 120, 130 pre-kids, but even those children have developmental milestones that we expect them to reach at certain stages. And teachers write lesson plans. So people in the K-12 world are very familiar with teachers writing lesson plans for those students, but you need to know that even those who are dealing with infants and toddlers and 4-year-olds, they have lesson plans and they plan lessons to help meet the standards that are set for those kids, because we want to move them along. Many of the kids that come into the district program, primarily because we're a Head Start funded program, that means that the kids have to meet certain poverty levels, basically free and reduced lunch, actually free lunch levels. And so, many of them come in behind, and so if they're entering our program at 4, a lot of times they really do assess at the age of like 1.5 to 2 years, especially in vocabulary. Vocabulary is the key to reading. If they don't know, if you haven't heard a word, if you think about reading a book yourself and you're reading along and you come to a word and you're like, and then somewhere you remember hearing that word, you can sound it out. You can think, oh, that's that word. Even though it's not part of your daily vocabulary. Young children, it's the same thing. They have to hear words, and so that's a pre-reading skill. And so a lot of vocabulary is really important. And so a lot of our kids come in way behind. So we have a number of things that we look at. Approaches to learning is really kind of how kids self-regulate, kind of their motivation for learning. Their social emotional development, are they able to interact with adults and other children? Of course, language and literacy, that includes things like the alphabet, blending words, as well as just understanding what is said to them. Cognition, and then the motor and physical development. So those are our school readiness goals that we try to reach. So this, I have to say to you, to me is a little bit of I'm not sure, there's some caveats that need to go with this. So if you look at this, and kids in the state of Florida who are ready to start school, so there's a lot of discussion out there about what being ready means, okay? So, but this is ready based on how they do on the STAR early reading. And so that is how many, letters and numbers do they recognize, that kind of thing. So you can see that throughout Florida, red is 27 to 59% of all children come ready. I do want to say to you that the testing environment really affects this. And so to me, in my experience, this is a little bit skewed, but this is the data that we have. and this is what we live with, and this is what we need to move, we need to react to.
Do the children entering kindergarten take the STAR test on the computer just like the first?
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. And that's part of the problem, just so that you know. So there is, so here's the example. So there's an assessment, so you've got young children, and they're 4, maybe they just turned 5. They're coming into the kindergarten classroom. They're used to using their parents' telephones, their parents' iPads. We have watched our kids, we have administered the test to some of our pre-K kids in the pre-K classroom. And what happens is if they're asked to, say, recognize a letter, they go and they point to the screen. And nothing happens. So then they have to go and be redirected if somebody is there to redirect them, and that's not always the case. But if somebody's there to redirect them, then they have to go to the mouse. And truly, you gotta think that's eye-hand coordination. And I don't know about you, I know how long it took me on a laptop computer to get used to just moving the cursor around. And it's the same kind of thing for young children. So it really is to me, it's a little bit skewed, but.
Can you send us
this
these
is-
slides or no? Can you
Yeah, you'll have them in your,
Okay, good.
yeah, you'll have them there.
Why is that in place where they have to use,
That was the decision made.
Well, yeah, it's the deal is that there's a law, that says that children have to be assessed. That children who come through the BPK program have to
Right.
be assessed during the first 30 days of kindergarten. So that is the assessment that the state has decided, they have to choose an assessment.
talking about like actually,
Right, and the assessment is on the computer, so
what
that's.
if a kid doesn't have a hand? Like, it just seems to me if there's a way the child can identify it, then
Physical
that's,
assistive devices.
does it actually
Right.
specify they
Well,
have to
the
use a
child-
mouse?
No,
Or that, okay,
no.
so is that an internal problem, that we can only have a mouse and not a touchpad?
No, the thing is that the district, throughout our district, that's what we have Chromebooks, that's what our district has decided to go with, and so that's what is available in the classroom. We don't have iPads, they don't really support iPads here in this district.
I wonder if that green district has iPads.
Just
Well, I'm gonna tell you,
This
there's.
doesn't indicate what you.
There's 2 things and one thing just discovered yesterday. So one thing that we really need to look into, and that's something that we are gonna look into, because this is relatively new information for us. But that's one thing, is Sarasota, do they have iPads in their classroom, or do they have touch screens or something like that? That's the first thing. The other thing we found out that there's a lot of children that don't have to be assessed on this. So like ELL children, there's children with disabilities. There are children who don't have to be assessed. Well, we assess everybody in our district, and so that affects our scores. But the point is we still want kids to be ready. But what does ready mean? Does ready mean recognizing 10 letters, or does it mean 26 letters? Or does it simply mean that you know that you need to come to school, that you come to school healthy and ready to learn, that you have a large vocabulary, that you have some awareness that letters make sounds, because that's how you start reading. So there's a lot of discussion out there about what readiness really means. But in this case, this is how the state has elected to decide if kids are ready for school. Years ago, we had a checklist, and it had letters and numbers on it, but it also had things like, are kids healthy, do they come to school, are their parents engaged, those kinds of things.
So a lot of schools do kindergarten screening.
Yeah,
But
this
that's
is-
voluntary.
Right,
That's before they go, and they sit actually one with a teacher who goes through a series of questions.
you're talking about like May or June?
Or
Yeah.
over the summer, yeah.
Yeah.
So the kindergarten.
Yes, and
Is
that's a
Is
screener.
that factored in?
That's different, totally different. No, this is the early star
Mhm.
is the assessment that the state has contracted with in order to determine readiness.
I wanna just make a comment.
Please.
It's interesting. I happened to be at the Department of Education in Tallahassee when they were rolling this out, because I was working on a grant for something else. And the gentleman who was from the organization that developed this kindergarten readiness test was demoing it on an overhead. And he, because he was turned to the audience while he was trying to talk, he could barely click the correct answer, and one time he clicked next when he didn't mean to click next, and he was not able to get back. So he said, how is a 4-year-old who accidentally clicks the mouse when it happens to be hovering over the next button going to understand to go back, or that they even went forward? And there was, there was a lot of twittering in the
Yes,
room
there
at
is,
that time.
yeah.
So when earlier we mentioned, advocate with your legislators at the state level, these are the kinds of things to be aware of. This is a state mandated task. It's
Right,
was
but I'm
developed
saying
at
the
state
mechanism by doing it. My wife's a kindergarten teacher, so
Yeah.
I hear this every day, she's like,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
how many kids are looking for a mouse today? They don't know what a mouse
Yeah.
is, cause.
Exactly.
Well, it's, I mean, my daughter
yeah.
teaches
So-
first grade, and we have the same problem. When the kids are at the computer, half of them at the beginning of the year don't know how to use a mouse, so.
So that's what I'm saying,
problem.
is that an equipment issue for every district? Or does the state mandate you must use a mouse that is,
No, it's
Physically
it would be more of an equipment issue, it's
That's
not.
actually the issue with helping my daughter with her homework. I keep trying to touch her screen on her phone.
Yeah. Yeah, see, yeah, it is, so you can see, I mean, and I don't wanna make any excuses for anything, I just wanna say that, this is what the data shows us, but there is information behind that data that people need to be aware of, and I think like you said, I think that's a great point. Advocating for what is developmentally appropriate. We do have, even if we had kids sitting there with a mouse, and we've tried to do that in our pre-K classes, we tried to expose them to that. It's still hard, it's really not developmentally appropriate for kids, they're really not ready to do that.
I just have a question. So the 27 to 59, I'm assuming we're in the red. I can't.
Oh yeah, we're in the red,
So,
we're right here,
okay, so
we're at 40.
is that 27%, is that kind of falling in line with our transients and our ELLs that come in? Is that why that number would start out so low at 27? Because like we get, we're an international school, and so for me, as reading coach, every new kid that comes in, I test them to make sure that they are in the right reading class. Usually if they're from up north, they don't usually need reading because their
Right.
sounds are so high. But we want to make sure that those students are placed in the correct level because we have spent millions of dollars on a reading program. And so what we find with our ESOL students is they come in and they're looking at the screen and have no idea. So I constantly use Google Translate a lot with them, and I'll test them on their own, like in my office. But we find that a lot of them have not been to school
Right,
in 4, 5, 6 years, and they get placed by their age.
right.
And so my question, so the 27%, is that based maybe because of that population?
Well, I think it contributes to it, absolutely. And I will tell you, again, my years of experience with kids, we have so many kids that come in that really don't speak any English at all when they enter the classroom. The only language spoken in their home is Spanish or Creole or something else. Most of the time though, it's Spanish or Creole. And the gains that they make throughout the year, especially at this age, I mean, they just have such a capacity, but still, they're not gonna make that much, that enough gain in order to sit down in kindergarten after summer, when there's a nice summer slide that happens, we all know that they're gonna be able to do this in kindergarten. And then even if that does contribute to it, absolutely. But there are also kids that come into our program, again, especially in Lee County. Now, this is everybody, this isn't just the district, this is every child who goes to any child care provider in Lee County is counted this, because this is given in kindergarten. So I mean, whether they're in on Sanibel or in Lehigh or wherever they are, they're all considered into this. I will tell you though, that the principal at Sanibel even said, our kids can't use the mouse, that's why they have trouble. So, and you think Sanibel kids are probably more likely than most kids to have access to a computer and possibly a mouse, but you don't have a lot of that mouse stuff anymore. So much of it is either the laptop or I forget what that thing, the pad on the laptop or a lot of tech, and that's what kids are playing with, their parents' phones, their parents' iPads, so anyhow, so that's it. But then again, we have a lot of kids that come in so far behind, so far behind and so low when they start in the program.
Good question.
So, yeah.
Does the state have a percentage that they deem acceptable for percentage of kindergarten students ready?
They do, and I think it's around, I wanna say, I can't remember if it's 60 or 70%.
Okay.
It's pretty low, they had to make it pretty low because, they're having, their VPK program is evaluated on this. And that's the other thing about this is a pretty high stakes test, believe it or not, for these kids. Because any kid that comes in and takes this assessment, it's tied back to whatever preschool they went to. And then those preschool programs are then put on a list as, at-risk providers. And, it may or may not really be legitimate.
So in summary, since the statewide average is 53%, the state acknowledges that they're failing at this. If they have a fail, the whole state of Florida is basically failing
Right,
in their eyes.
right.
Either they're failing or they're testing.
Yes.
Well, however they do it,
Right.
yeah, but the number, the end result is they fail.
It would be interesting to know what percentage of the lower scores are due to equipment issues, not just the type of device, but some other things I've seen, and Jeannie, you can probably
Right.
attest to this. Kids have earphones sometimes that they're brought in from home that are too big, that don't stay in their little ears, so they can't really hear the audio. And so they're spending the time like trying to stick the earbuds in their ears and they're falling out and they don't hear what the screen is telling them. So there's lots of technology
And
issues.
it's hard to tell because, this has to be administered within the first 30 days of kindergarten. And, the question is, why can't we do a pre and post test in BPK or in our preschool classrooms? There seems to be some concern that teachers, pre-K teachers won't be honest, but, third grade teachers administer the FSA, so why would we think anybody would be less on, I don't know. Those are just all the
VPK
things.
programs are just incentivized to get
Just
kids
yell out now, right?
as high as they can. So they just teach them rote memorization of letters and things, and the kids can't, they can't follow it.
That's right, exactly, you're right, and so see, that gets back to the question, what is readiness? Is readiness, I can remember when I taught pre-K, I had a child who was 4 years old who didn't know how to use a tissue to wipe his nose or put a sweater on. And I have to tell you, this was an affluent family. And so, there's just a lot to it.
Is there an orientation for the parents that are gonna put their kids in one of these preschool programs?
Not all of them, because
That to me would be the key.
yeah.
If the parent knows what's expected of the child before they get into the program, I would think there'd be a lot better chance of them being prepared and ready from home.
Yeah.
Your comment about Sanibel, I can't believe that if you had an orientation for those folks over there, that, even in Estero, the people that we have here.
Right.
I think they'd step up to the plate to make sure.
But I wonder how many people are using computers these days that have a mouse? I don't know.
I'd love to see the study of.
I haven't used them.
Run the test and then pick one school to do this testing, and the next day with the old fashioned pen and paper, circle your answer and see the difference in
Right.
how the kids do. That's how we all.
They have a hard time bubbling.
I was gonna say, this is.
Yeah, but we all did it somehow.
Right, we did, but honest to God, when it comes to
Really? That's
us,
it?
when we do the PSAT, if we take the kids to have them at least get that stuff done ahead of time, so it does take a lot of time. You'd be amazed at how many you'd have to actually show.
Yeah, and I don't know
Try to
about
do.
bubbling, I think our 4-year-old's probably circling the answer with a
Yeah.
crayon or something. But it'd be interesting to see the difference of the same kids, same test, just one electronic versus manual.
Yeah, we can do
What
that.
the, what the,
Yeah, I can do that.
Or on touchscreens.
Well, I mean,
So,
that's an investment, I mean, the paper would be easier just to do it at a class of 20, you know.
yeah, we could do that
Yeah, the
easy
state
enough.
one only said,
So
No,
this is
I'm not saying-
NVPK, which is the state program. We do have an assessment that they give us to do. So you saw that our scores were like 40% here in Lee County. This is our district. These are our district programs. These are our low income, high at risk, because if you're gonna get in a Head Start program, you have to meet 100% poverty level. So that means, I think it's about $22,000 for a family of 4. That's how you qualify to get in. And then we have so many kids, then we have to say, okay, now who gets in? Because I only make, I qualify, you qualify, you qualify. So I only have one spot. Which of our children are gonna get in? So, I only have a 10th grade education, but you finished your associate's degree. So my kid, would probably get in. Or, but you speak Spanish, and that's the only language in your home, so maybe, you get points for different things, and that's kind of how we assess those risk factors. There's a list of risk factors, and we give points for that. So it's not first come, first serve, it's really based on high need. But anyhow, these are the trends. You can see here in our district, we're going up. With print knowledge, phonological awareness. Phonological awareness is, sounds that letters make sounds. Math is adding, counting, that kind of thing, oral language. So, but you can see, these are our at-risk kids, and they're scoring up in the, 70s and 80s, but our district as a whole is it just doesn't make sense to me. But it is the information, and so it's what we deal with, and so, we continue to try to make improvements as best we can. So some of the other things that we're doing here in the district, just to continue to improve our pre-K scores, our readiness, that kind of thing. We have, a few years ago, we established a pre-K to 3, that's pre-K, because early childhood really goes up to grade 3. People always think it's just pre-K, but it's really the primary grades. And so we really wanted to try to look at how do we align, how can we better align pre-K all the way to 3rd grade. How is it that we can make it easier for a child who's coming from preschool and going into kindergarten or kindergarten into 1st grade? How can we make those things a little bit easier, the transitions easier, so that kids are successful right off the bat? And so we established this work group to do that. One of the things that we did was we got a grant from the Southwest Florida Community Foundation in order to begin some of this work and to incentivize some of our private providers into working with us. So one of the things that we've done is we have a preferred pre-K provider program. Right now we only have 5 providers. So here's another thing that I will tell you about the state of our community, and that is we have approximately 300, give or take, child care centers in our area. Only 5 of them have met the criteria to be a preferred pre-K provider. So what that means is, one of the things is the Early Learning Coalition has a quality rating improvement system, and it's like a 5-star rating, 1 to 5 stars, 5 being the highest. And if you meet certain criteria, then you're awarded a star, or up to 5 stars. And so to be a preferred, we didn't want the district to go out and, touch programs and say, okay, you meet quality, because they already had this going on. So we decided to kind of piggyback on their program. And those providers that meet either 4 or 5 stars were invited to join us as a preferred pre-K provider. Then if they're a preferred pre-K provider, they come into the district. We provide some professional development. We bring kindergarten teachers in, preschool teachers in. We say, what does it look like in pre-K? What does it look like in kindergarten? Do some training about that. Do some training about assessment and data. And then the other thing that they do is have an articulation committee meeting with a principal at a school that they feed into. So if their child goes to Villas, they would meet with the Villas principal. So, but the problem, the challenge that we've had is being able to invite enough providers that are high quality. And, like I said, we have 5. We had 6, but 1 dropped from a 4 or 5 star to like a 2 or 3 star. So we said, well, then you can't be in the pre-K provider program. But that's a way that we're trying to reach out into the community and raise the quality in the community. Because one thing that we know here in our district, especially at this point in time, we did not have the capacity, even if we wanted to bring in every preschooler, we're talking 6,500, at least 6,500 kindergartners coming into our district every year. So in order to serve that, we don't have the capacity in terms of space or teachers. There's a big teacher shortage out there. So we know we have to work with our community and we have to collaborate and cooperate with our community. So this was one of the ways we tried to do it. Out of the preferred pre-K providers came the principal forums. And so one of the things that we've been working on, I have to tell you, it's taken a couple of years. It doesn't seem like it should have taken that long, but it has, and we've worked right diligently at it, but we wanted to get it right. And this is where principals and pre-K providers, so a child care center, the director and their teachers would meet with the principal and the kindergarten teachers, and they would come together and they would talk about how can they work together? How can they better prepare those kids for kindergarten? And so they have these conversations, and then at the second meeting, they develop a plan. Out of those plans, there have been pre-K teachers, preschool teachers from a private provider who have gone into a kindergarten classroom at the beginning of the year and observed and said, okay, this is what it looks like. Now I know how to help my kids prepare. The kindergarten teachers have gone to the preschool at the end of the year to say, okay, this is where the kids are and this is how they're coming to me. A couple of things that have come out of that is one time we were talking about, and I said, so kindergarten teachers, what's one of the skills you really hammer home that first quarter? And it was phonemic awareness. And so I said, that's exactly what the pre-K teachers do. And so then we started talking, and they talked about how when they talk to the kids, they talk about peeling back the sound. Well, the pre-K teachers didn't know that. I mean, that was something that goes with the reading curriculum. And so that was an easy thing. Now the pre-K teachers can talk about, we peel back the sound, and we do this and we do that. And then when they get there to kindergarten and they hear that, then it's not foreign to them.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Okay, I was at an event on Saturday night, and I guess this guy was filthy rich, because he was sitting on our table, I've never met him before, he came over to talk to me, and he is building a program with the YMCA in Bonita Springs that he's paying for preschool. How do you folks interact with that? I mean, obviously, it's not hard, I guess, is it sanctioned by the Lee County School District or no?
No.
So they do this stuff on their own, and, I mean, how do you folks kind of get put together here?
Kathleen knows about that.
Yeah, so Lauren Stillwell, Dr. Atkins, Superintendent Chief of Staff, is actually, they are connecting with the Ys that are providing pre-K programs. And so they're looking for a way to.
It's summer programs though, isn't it? I've heard about it.
Have you met this guy?
Yeah, I've been this guy.
Oh, you have, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a legit?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Fred Forbes had brought him, and there were so many people there.
Yeah.
So you know, okay, so you know the person, that's good.
I haven't
Yeah.
connected with him personally from an early childhood perspective. I have heard that the Y is doing, I thought it was more summer and after school programs, but I don't know.
Well, maybe I misunderstood, but I know Sky is not about summer, Sky is about pre-K.
Preschool,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, that's what he said.
Yeah, so,
Good. And that's what we need. If he has a
Right.
lot of money and he wants to put the money behind it, that's what we need, people with quality. Because I have to tell you, early childhood is expensive, it's low ratios, there's a lot to it. So the other thing that's come out of the pre-K to 3 work group is the kindergarten screener and brochure. And that's just so we have a consistent screener across the district. We now have a brochure that we can hand to parents that say, these are some of the things that your child will be expected to know when they get to kindergarten, and these are some ways that you can help them. So, early childhood expansion is another way that you may have heard we're really working on in the district. The superintendent is definitely behind this. He really wants by 2030 to have 2/3 of the kids in some kind of district affiliated preschool program, whether it's one that we offer specifically in the district or whether it's one that we're like a preferred pre-K provider. So next year, we're hoping to increase by approximately 200 slots. We're gonna see, and then the long-term goal is to continue to work towards that 2/3 as much as we can. Ways that we're gonna do that is James Stephens International Academy. We're looking at this time, there's a design underway to remodel. There's unused space in that building, which is why we went there. They're hoping to have 12 classrooms over there next year. Then Franklin Park, this just happened, the James Stephen, the design being underway. And then Franklin Park has been identified for a community partnership school grant. That, if you look down here, that's not scheduled to open until 2023, 24, but pre-K is a part of that. So there will be some expansion there. We're expecting in December that the James Stephens remodel will be complete and that we'll be able to start taking students hopefully in January. There's an elementary school coming in Estero. The design, there's talk about trying to make sure pre-K is included, not as an afterthought, but as the beginning of any new schools that come. We've also talked a lot about Lehigh. I've got over 100 kids on a wait list out in Lehigh that would benefit from our preschool program. So there's some portables at Lehigh Senior High that once they're finished with that, there was some talk about possibly having a pre-K center there in those portables until we might be able to build a pre-K center in Lehigh. And then there's a new school coming to Lehigh, and so we're hoping to have that design to include pre-K too. So there's a lot of talk about expanding. As a matter of fact, we had a conversation today about some federal funds that may be available that might get us a building. So we're hoping for that.
Jeannie, would
So-
you be able to share with the committee what it actually costs to have a pre-K at a school or add a pre-K to an existing school? Do you have that information?
You mean building or just, if the space was available, to outfit a pre-K classroom is probably about $50,000, $50,000 to $60,000. Now that includes a playground. If you have a school that already has a playground, that reduces the cost. But it's around $50,000 to $60,000 too. Because in preschool you don't buy textbooks, but you buy manipulatives and we don't buy desks, but we buy tables and chairs and shelves. And so those are all the things that you put in a preschool classroom. So our inventory is somewhere around $50,000. Then you're looking at a teacher and a paraprofessional, because for at least in our programs, we do 1 to 9, 2 to 18. You have a teacher and a para. And so, you're talking probably right around 100,000 or so a year to pay a teacher and a para. I'll tell you, the initial expense of setting up the classroom is a bigger barrier than just about anything else. You know, cause sometimes you can, we can fund with fee-based, we can fund with, if we put, if we make sure that it's an inclusion classroom like all of ours are, there could be some state money coming in. We've got the VPK program, which is only for 3 hours a day. So when people talk about the VPK program, just remember, it's only 3 hours per day. And so anything that they say about VPK is supported either fee-based, by Title I, by Head Start, whatever. I don't know how many kids just do 3 hours a day. Not many, I can tell you if there are any. It's a cost to do it. So yeah.
Has it ever been discussed, for example, we have a lot of the high schools that are now academies, about possibly incorporating that in, one classroom that would be dedicated to that?
As a matter of fact, Eastleigh County High School is looking at that for next year. I can tell you that Fort Myers Technical College has a class over there where they're training students to be childcare employees. And so there are kids there, but next year Eastleigh County is looking for that as one of their certification programs. So yeah, there's some talk about that. It's a hot topic.
That leads me to 2 points that I wrote down here.
Sure.
Very early on. You mentioned that there are a lot of factors that affect this, and that's true. But if you want to get your biggest bang for your buck, I'm going to suggest to you it is class size. Let me rephrase that. The relationship of a student to an adult, or maybe just another human being. You just mentioned a program there that might have some possibilities. Kids learn, we all know this, surely we do, I do. We all begin to learn at different times. And,
That's right.
and they must have missed me for the first 3 or 4 years at least before I finally caught on why I was there. But that happens when you have that relationship, when you have somebody that cares and somebody who can just answer your question, maybe help you learn how to get back on the mouse, I don't know, or throw away the mouse and do something else. Those are technical things that I personally am interested in, but I don't get too excited about them because I believe in that.
It's not the most important thing. What
It
you're
is not.
talking about is the
by a
most
large
important thing.
margin. It's if you look at the research, and I think the research would back this up, it's these other factors. And of course, now we're talking about big bucks, which we've never been able to make an investment in public schools. Just never have.
And it's training, and then that gets back to pay for teachers. If you think pay for teachers is bad, you need to look at pay for childcare workers in the community. It's, it's low.
So the biggest, the biggest obstacle is really space and retrofitting space, not so much, we can find the money for the teacher and the para.
Yeah, well, in our district, really because most of our schools are at capacity or better.
So do we have like a hot list of, we got a mayor in here, is there any unused space in the steroid? But that may be,
Not this week anymore.
no. But I guess as you see shifting demographics or companies or government buildings, like do we have any communication out there like, let's say City of Fort Myers decides or the Sheriff's Office decides, we're not gonna use all of this space anymore. If that could be space for a VPK program.
Right, well, I believe that most of our, that our operations people are planning and growth, we have a planning and growth department, so I believe that they're, I know that they're out there looking for property. I don't know, Ms. Morgan could probably speak to this even better than I can, but I know that they're out there looking for property, they're looking for opportunities. They're in all of our meetings, we're having expansion committee meetings, to be honest with you, we've been having them for 2 or 3 years. We're really finally getting some traction. But they're in those meetings and they know we're looking. I mean, we've talked about, the old Kmart, you know, we've developed schools into old Kmarts and stuff, and so we've talked about that.
Well, the school, this elementary school, I don't know what that entails out of school year, but we're having a meeting with Dr. Atkins next week on the Estero piece.
Yeah.
Because there's 2 pieces of land around the existing school where the church is, and we're doing some flip-flop fence and stuff.
Yep.
And hopefully we'll work a deal out with the district, but that'll enlarge that whole campus, which will really make it nice, and we think we can pull off, see what happens.
And that would be a great place to add a pre-K center, you know, at that, on that school campus. It would really be, you know, that'd be great. Because we have a lot of kids in that area. We have a very large population of preschool children, birth to 5 at Benita Elementary.
But we're lucky to have that space there that we can buy, there's 2 big pieces.
Yep.
It'll make that really a nice thing,
Be great.
so we'll see what happens.
I think that's one of the great things about this committee is the more we learn about these kinds of issues, then when we're out in the community and we're talking to people, we can give them some good information about some of the needs.
Anything else?
Anybody else have any questions for Jeannie? Okay, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Really
That was very good.
Oh, good. Well, give me a call if you have any questions or if you hear of anything and want to know more. I'm always, as you can tell, I'm always happy to talk about pre-K. I'm a little too happy to talk about it.
Jeannie, on that first slide, there was the, like, birth to 5, about what steps and where they should be at different stages. Is that on the website that we can pull?
Where they,
Is that-
you know what, I would go to the state's early learning office of early learning website. And then, yeah, because, I don't think it was broken down that small there. But if you look at the standards, the birth, they're Florida, I think they're called birth to 5 early childhood
Birth to 5,
standards,
okay.
yeah. And if you just Google that, if you can't find it, then just shoot me an email and I'll find it for you. But yeah, if you just go to the Office of Early Learning, there's a place there that has the standards.
Okay.
And that'll give it to you. Okay?
Thanks again, Jeannie.
All right, thank you, have a good evening.
You too. So we are a little bit ahead, but we're at the point in the meeting that is good of the order. So I'd like to invite anybody who would like to share something for the good of the order at this time. It must have been one of the days everybody's so quiet. All right, well, if there's nothing else, we obviously don't want to stay if there's nothing to share. So I would like them to entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting. So we got a first and a second?
Oh, I wanted to stay all night.
Okay, well then I guess we have a no.
Oh, you're working.
Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Everybody got, it just occurred to me, the new date, did you all get the date?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
What's the new date?
At,
March 31st.
for the community event at, yes, yeah, okay.
And our next meeting is March 11th.
Didn't have the time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.